Welcome to Talent Takeover
Unfiltered.
When it comes to working hard and keeping it real, we know our shit. Self-care, happiness, inner peace, and time. I'm Brianna Rooney, and this is Taylor Bradley.
Hey, y'all.
And we have thrived in chaos and turned it into an art form. So Taylor, what are we doing here today?
We're here to give you a raw, under-the-hood view of all things recruiting and finally give credit where credit is due to a long underrated industry that's full of quote-unquote experts.
All right. Well, then let's take this show to the road. Hello. Welcome to Talent Takeover Unfiltered. Taylor Bradley, what is going on?
Wow, just living the dream over here. I feel like I haven't seen or talked to you in so long.
I know, it's so sad. And actually, we haven't had our own one-on-one podcast in a long time. So I have been thirsty for this. I'm like, looked at my schedule today and I am jazzed.
Same. Guys, we threw this together at like the last minute to we wanted to get some content out to you guys. So we threw this together last minute and when our schedules could align. And that's always really exciting for us because it's rare. But yeah, I haven't had the chance to like shoot the shit with you in a long time.
I know, it's so sad. So today we're going to, so this episode actually was for my side, I thought of my sister. So my sister is,
call her out.
Yeah,
thought of my sister.
This is Lindsay.
Name her.
She is going through, hopefully getting this job today, actually. So knock on wood there. But she hadn't interviewed in a really long time. It was a really big position for her, a big opportunity. And so she wanted to role play. I'm like, oh, yes, there for that. So I realized, wow, people have hard times with certain questions. And so this episode is all about how to answer the about you questions, the ones that I think in general, people feel away. Like they can't talk great about themselves, regardless of how their confidence is. They don't want to brag, but they, it's like, it's like, we haven't seen someone since high school and they're like, hey, how's it been? Where you're like, I don't know, you got time for like 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I'm curious to know what you told your sister. So what was the advice and do you know that that's what they're going to ask her because that's just a common interview question, or did they ask her that and she bombed? Like, tell us about this experience with your sister.
Yeah, for sure. So what I did, and actually I think maybe this is for how to prep an interview, so possibly a different episode, but real quick.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, give me the job description. And so I looked at everything that they were going to want her to do, right? And then I asked questions around that. But then I focused on like, look, like you nailed that. Now I need to ask you about yourself, about your soft skills, because as we were talking about soft skills and hard skills, right? It's going to go hand in hand and maybe perhaps soft skills above hard. So I said, all right, tell me about yourself. Why are you good for this role? And it was like on this like crazy tangent that I had to like, reel her back in. Like, yeah, come back in. Where are we going here? You're like literally jumping off of a deep end. And I think it's because, when you're kind of going on this tangent and someone's meant to just listen to you, you are kind of talking at them. It's not like more of a conversation at that point. I think you just kind of get lost. Like, I feel like sometimes in this podcast, I'm like, and here I am. I'm just, wait, what were we talking about?
Yeah. No, it's so funny to me because I think it's probably true for everybody is that you can, and you think it'd be the reverse, is that you could speak about your work experience. And maybe it's because we rehearse that so much about like, here's why my skills are a good fit for this job. Here's how I've done XYZ. This job requires XYZ, whatever it is. But when you're asked to talk about yourself, it's like, how do you be brief and be bright with that and know what they want to hear when they're like, what answer are they looking for? And obviously that can vary depending upon the company. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. I feel like that one is a really hard, whenever I'm asked to talk about myself, it's like, nobody likes to talk about themselves. Well, actually some people do. Narcissists do. But I just feel like it's not a common thing to just go and kind of give an elevator pitch, but we should all have one. I mean, I really feel like as I'm sitting here saying this, I'm like, I can't believe in all the years that I've been doing recruiting, even for my own self, I don't have an elevator pitch. You probably do because of all the different speaking engagements you do and talking about your background, training people, to own and run their own agencies and whatnot. You have to talk about yourself and your experience and how it's relative to what they're wanting to do. But unless for the rest of us, it's typically just an interview thing. Like, unless you're interviewing for a job, you don't really get asked, like, tell me about yourself.
I think something that helped her and hopefully helps listeners is you should always present yourself as the solution.
Yeah.
You are the solution. And so like you're saying, like as I teach people to own their own agencies and do biz dev and get clients and stuff like that, they have to have that spielio. Like it has to be an interesting combination between mostly professional, but then put in those little like soft skills and, you know, like, hey, I'm a mom of two. Great.
Yeah.
You know, that's absolutely in my spiel. That is the about me. That is like what makes me tick and stuff like that. That is what makes me efficient, you know?
Yeah. But on the flip side of that, in an interview, I don't think it's a great, and I mean, this is going to be like, you know, probably controversial, but I don't think it's a great good practice to talk about your kids in your interview.
Oh, interesting.
Because there are companies that will use that against you, you know, and will be like, oh, well, she probably can't work the hours. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where, you know, if it's like, this is a whole nother subject, but I really want to talk about this at one point. Like, whenever you get to an application and it gets to the part where it speaks about a disability, have you seen that?
Yes.
Have you applied for a job ever?
No, but I at least know what they look like.
Well, and I mean, today there's so many more options of as far as what is considered a disability. I mean, it's mental health, it's actual physical disability. I mean, it's a long list where it's like, man, it'd be hard to find somebody that doesn't have at least one of these things or has experienced one of these things and that qualifies a disability. But it's like, how is that perceived by employers? Do they really want the real answer to that question? So I think that is a one, because I've had people ask me, should I be honest in that question? So I think we'll save that for a later date. But I definitely think you have to cater your answer to a certain extent to the company. And if it's like, it's a read the room thing. You have to know what type of environment you're going into and what type of answers they want to hear. And I think it should be widely accepted to talk about your children and I'm a mom and I do this or that, or like but I've actually seen it used against people to mention that they're a parent, to mention that they're pregnant, to mention that they coach these things that will impact their ability to work till 9 p.m. You know, they coach their kids' sports or whatever. So I think it's probably best for people to err on the side of caution and come up with a good answer to that to use that's applicable across all companies, regardless of what their culture or environment is. Like just have a standard spiel that you give. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to be a mom. Obviously, I am one. I've worked with some companies where
you got some
these things that shouldn't be a negative thing. It should be like, oh, you know, I'm a mom too, or I'm a parent too. And even if they are parents, it's still like if they being the employers, like if they are parents themselves or the hiring manager is a parent himself, it's still like the expectations that they have for candidates sometimes differ than what they have for themselves or people that are already working internally. So I think coming up with like a good about me spiel that maybe doesn't get too personal, because I feel like that's where things tend to go left for people, even if it's not about kids. But like if you start talking too much about your personal stuff and like, I just feel like that'll, you know, it'll just backfire.
Yeah, I can backfire. I totally get that one. Okay, so the next question that I prepped her for was, why are you a fit for this job?
Well, but you got to tell us what she's like. What was the spiel that y'all came? Like, what did you tell her that she should say
about her?
Like how? What was your sample? How you should answer that?
Yeah. So I wanted her to essentially like look over her resume again, and then see like her experience, and then see essentially why she's there today.
Yeah.
So it's more of a like, hey, you know what? So she's worked at the Marriott, then she went to New York. She's like had all these interesting adventures that maybe on paper doesn't make her look as stable as she was in the past. And so I said like, look, hey, you know what? I'm a happy-go-lucky, really strong work ethic individual. I used to work at the Marriott for many years. I ran their activities. I loved doing that. I loved pleasing guests. I loved, you know, having them come here and like, you know, feeling a part of the community. And then I was feeling like I needed an adventure myself. So I moved all the way to New York. Didn't really have a plan, but it was just such a fun experience. And then I got into what I love to do most, which is plan events. And so the job is for like a wedding planner, like a wedding planner, event coordinator. And so she's like, so then I found this job. I loved it so much, but at the end of the day, New York wasn't for me, and it was meant just for me to have an adventure. So here I am, you know, back in Tahoe, Reno area, and I know that my passion is event planning. I know that I'm well organized and dedicated, and that's a little bit about myself. And then I was like, hey, and I have it now. I did say personal, because I think wedding planning, that is kind of some stuff. And so I'm like, hey, I have a dog. I live down the street. This is an excellent commute for me. And I want to continue my career down this path, because I think this is where I'm supposed to be.
I think that's a great answer. Like, fantastic. You coached her to a fantastic answer. And then that's an example, exactly what you said, as of a job that I think it's important to incorporate a little bit of personal in there, because it's wedding planning, which is, I mean, a wedding is super personal to a lot of people, right? So
that,
so that's where a great example of like read the room. You know what I mean? Like if you're interviewing for a more social job, something that actually tugs at the heartstrings, something, you know, like a photographer would be another one that you don't want to talk about like all business and not incorporate, you know, my love for photography developed from taking pictures of my kids. I think there's a time and a place, and you have to read the room and know the company that you're interviewing for. And like if sprinkling in those little personal nuggets will go over well. But I think even the way you had her describe her background, like her journey to New York, to like, that wasn't really for me. It's personal, but it's not over the top personal or over that line
like
personal.
digging.
It's
digging deep. It's
it's your journey, you know. But then I think it's a great answer.
My thought process for like tell me about yourself was also in my opinion is to be like, hey, if they have any doubts or if they see any weird things on my resume or that maybe they're going to already ask me about, I kind of want to just put it in there. Like I'm being very transparent, you know, because like as I look at a resume and I see gaps, I mean, we talked about gaps in a different episode. So if anyone wants to listen to that, definitely check it out. But I wanted to just kind of address it.
Yeah.
You know, like they're, I don't think it's a bad thing. Let me just walk you through like my life in the last 10 years, basically.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think one that people can work in that I always love whenever I'm doing interviews and people just work this into the conversation, because it's 100% of the time an interview question. If somebody's currently employed, or even if they're not, and they're, you know, like why are you looking to leave, or why are you looking for something new? I think whenever you ask somebody to give like tell me about yourself, give me an overview of your background, for people to just automatically incorporate, which this led me to XYZ Corporation. And, you know, I feel like I've done everything I could do there, and I'm really looking for a role that's going to challenge me, and kind of naturally tell why they're looking for something different without you having to be like, why are you wanting to leave this job? I feel like it can come off sometimes if you glaze over that, like you're not trying to be forthcoming of why you're looking to leave or why you're, you know, in the job market.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes to like, a parent who's taking time off. Be like, hey, you know what? I had this really great experience. I was able to stay home with my kids, and, you know, luckily now they're in kindergarten, and now I get to, you know, go be me in its fullest extent, you know? And so there is no, like, it doesn't feel heavy. You're not waiting for the elephant in the room question. You're not, I love that. That's good.
Yeah. Okay, now you can proceed with why are you a fit for this job. I knew you'd have a good answer, so I want our listeners to really get get an example of what a good answer is.
Yeah, no, I like that. So the why you're a fit for your job, you could have almost just did the same spiel that I did for the about me, but then I wanted it to be different, because then she can like really harness in. So I told her, like, look, first of all, look to see what they want, and look to see what, like, ooh, if you had this is like the cherry on the top kind of a thing. You know, research the other job descriptions. But I wanted her to grasp, again, back to the soft skills, but also they had something in here that talked about revenue. And I thought that was a really interesting ad. I mean, like there's some report that just came out that basically like the biggest thing people are looking for right now is how they can build revenue, and they need people to do that. Like that's that's the top job, right? So I said, hey, here's your answer. I am an amazing people person. I'm able to develop relationships very quickly, develop trust. I love setting forth someone's perfect day. I like taking the chaos out of things. I go above and beyond for everything. I'm a team player. My communication is very direct, but very friendly. And I really think that this is the path. This is my dream. And, you know, eventually I want to have like my own event position, and, you know, whatever. I went off on that like spielio. Basically, like I wanted to show that this is okay for her right now, but she has bigger aspirations because this is like a starting level. So that they knew she could keep growing, and that this is not just like a stop in her adventure. You know, this is actually a career for me.
So whenever you asked her that question, why are you a fit for this job? Did she give you a solid answer before you coached her? Did you feel like she got that one?
She nailed it. So this is why I was bringing up these two separate questions, because when I said, tell me about herself, it was like,
yeah.
It was like, tell me why you're a good fit for this role. And she nailed that. And that's why I was like, we have to talk about this, because people don't like when it comes to their job, they're like, oh, I own my job. But when it comes to like as a human being, it's like sometimes you're like, oh, maybe I don't own being a human being, you know? Like, who am I?
Yeah.
I remember
No.
when someone says, "What's your purpose?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, what? What's my purpose? Like maybe keeping my kids alive? I don't I don't
Yeah,
know."
like to get through this fucking interview and yeah.
What? My purpose? God, that's awful.
Well, and that would be, to me, that's indicative of probably the type of company that somebody interviewed with, like a very mission-driven organization. Again, it's read the room, like as far as the interview questions that you can anticipate. Because I feel like that's not one that everybody would ask. Like all companies ask, what's your purpose? But it's very much probably aligned with who they are as an organization.
Yeah.
If they're mission-driven and they want people that whose their personal purpose aligns with the company's mission, goals, vision, all of that. But I had never even thought about it before. And I'm thinking back on interviews that I've done recently. And I'm like, yeah, that's so true. It's so much easier to talk about your experience and what'd you do at XYZ company and what was your most notable achievement there. But then when you're talking about yourself, it's like, what do you want? How much information should I give? Where am I supposed to start? And, tell me about yourself is also a vague question because depending upon the company, they could want to know about you as a person, or it could be tell me about like your work experience background, or it could be incorporate both, which is what the answer that you gave her, or the suggestion that you have, which I think is perfect. But that's an interesting one versus like here we ask very pointed questions like, walk me through your background experience, notable achievements, who you reported to. But it's like, we are not asking about, somebody's like, well, after I graduated college, then I adopted this dog and learned how to play pickleball and like, like that's not what the answer that we're looking for. But I think there are companies like that are like, tell me something new that you taught yourself, that want to know things like that. Yeah. That are more like, well, I taught myself how to play pickleball. So it could get a little personal. But I think for our listeners, it's really, you got to know and like research. We say this all the time, but you really have to research the company that you're interviewing for and know like to anticipate, I guess, what kind of questions they're going to ask you and also how you should answer those questions.
100%. I even think looking at their LinkedIn to see how wordy they are, like if you're not dealing directly with the recruiter to prep you for that, then it's like you got to really like do your research. Like that goes like a really, really, really long way.
Yeah. And I think it used to be do your research so that you can tell the company when you're interviewing, like, oh yeah, I looked up the founder and I looked up this and I saw you guys did this and you just, were featured in this but it's like, that's one type of research that, yes, you should absolutely do. But then there's the other type of research that is like what we're talking about is, what type of interview questions they want. Are they brief? Are they super wordy? Exactly what you said. I think, there's two schools of thought there that we've never even touched on, but this is a great point. And I know there's a lot of people interviewing right now. A lot of people.
Tons. And it's like, they're finally getting interviews,
Yeah.
People are starting to hire a little bit more now, thank goodness. But so it's like now they're even more nervous because now they really need this interview.
Yeah.
So it went from being like, okay, like I get an interview and I'm ready and all those things to be like, oh shit, I can't fuck this up.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ones that I've seen, just to go on a random tangent here because it's very on brand, but at a company that uses like AI interviews, and I know this is like,
we're going to talk
AI,
about another subject. Yes, give it to me.
All the rage. But I mean, I just have so many thoughts on this. This is definitely a whole nother subject, but it asks you questions like that, like tell me about yourself. Why are you a good fit for this job? Like very big questions that require a wordy answer. It's not like, well, because I graduated and went X, Y. It's not like a brief answer where you could just spout it off. It's thoughtful. It's your story. And so some of these AI interviews, you have like 60 seconds to answer the question and you have a little timer going at the bottom. So it's like, yeah. Oh my God. I've actually watched some recently, like it's like a bloopers situation where it's recording and somebody's like, oh shit. And it's just like, oh shit, it's recording. And I was like dying. I was dying. We have to talk about this in another episode. We want to do it like, so for listeners, stay tuned. We're going to do a like, don't fear AI stuff, but also like, where is AI? Where is it going? Like all these things. We'll do like a couple episodes on this. But I have a couple stories of those as well. No, I mean, it's something we all should be getting familiar with because I know it's going to be used more frequently. Is it a little impersonal? Absolutely. And I can say this from firsthand experience, having gone through those processes. It feels, if you've never talked to anybody and you just go straight to a video interview with a timer with 60 seconds, but companies know they can do that these days. There are so many amazing candidates out there on the market and they're getting an abundance of applicants. So I understand the thought process of like, how do we dwindle down the applicants or weed out people that we're not going to talk to, because, you know, if you open any kind of TA role in today's market, you're going to get thousands of applicants.
So we cannot tangent because I know we're already like getting a time when we have a really good meaty one to get to. But
yeah,
now people are not posting their jobs. It is like insanely common that they are not posting anymore. They don't want to go through it. They just want referrals. So like just the last, like, I would say the last 4 days alone, I have seen like 6 different jobs in the Slack channel I'm in. And I'm like, holy shit, these are like big fucking great jobs. Like,
yeah,
this is, you know, so now it's like my time to be like, here you go. And like, as a recruiter, yeah, do I get paid for that? But not this situation. Like, no longer do I see really anyone getting paid for like an R for R situation. Like, you know, and again, I'm just trying to help. So it's like, here you go. Yeah, here's this profile. And they're like, can you just make an email intro? I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. So it's happening more and more and more. So hopefully everyone's looking out for each other, which is exactly why you have to tell your friends, your network, that you are looking, so that when these things pop up, they can refer you.
Absolutely. So you want to get to what is one thing you need to work on?
Yes, I have to get this, and I actually have my notes up. So as I was doing the role play, I was taking notes for my sister, so I didn't forget about this. Okay, so that's a hard question, right? What's the one thing that you can work on?
Yeah.
Most people go, well, I'm a perfectionist. It's like, okay, that's like everybody says that, and we all know that's not true, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So she goes,
oh God, you're laughing.
She goes, well, I need to learn not to talk so much. I get too comfortable with guests too soon, and we get really personal, and then we go, and then now it's not about work anymore, and we become friends and stuff. And I'm like, okay, stop there. This is for an events coordinator and planner and stuff. That's probably not a good look. You're not going to want to immediately tell your boss that you're getting too friendly with the guest. Probably not a good idea. Give me another one. She goes, okay, well, I think I get a really overwhelmed in the beginning. And so I'll need a little bit of time just to get comfortable. Okay, that's not a good one either.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like she's trying to be, my sister is so honest. And I love that. You have to be honest, right? You have to be transparent, but there's also a way to spin these things so you actually get the job, right?
Yeah.
So, so how would you spin if literally like the one thing you can think about is shit, I get overwhelmed like really easy in the beginning. How would you spin that?
Don't ever say that. I think regardless of job, I think that's really, really important that like, it doesn't matter what job you're doing. Starting a new job is overwhelming. It is for everybody, but I don't think it's going to go over well for any candidate to say that to an employer, regardless of the job that they're doing. If you're going to go work at Wendy's or if you're going to be a CFO, you don't say you get overwhelmed in the beginning. Like I would just never say that. So that one is like, I love that your sister's so honest, because these answers that you're giving are truly like, she's being honest with
100%.
Here's what I need to work on, and it's like, I would appreciate as a hiring manager, not the overwhelmed one, that would freak me out. Is like, okay, if somebody's going to come in and get overwhelmed, but I would be like, okay, I can appreciate that somebody's an event coordinator, develops these great relationships with people so much so that they become friends with them. I think she could use a version of that answer, maybe not for what you need to work on, but somewhere else, as far as like one of her strengths, that she develops like these really solid relationships that result in her getting referrals after she's planned a wedding or planned an event. So I think that could be a really good answer. I struggled with this one recently when I did an interview, and I gave a really honest answer too. And you were involved in this, so you know what my answer was about, I forgot how I worded it, and you'll be able to help me out here, but I get really emotionally attached to my team. Like they become my friends. We work really well together. We all respect each other. That's why we work well together. It's just like, I'm not going to ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do. And so I gave that answer of like what it was not exactly like what's one thing you need to work on, but it was a version of this question, which I feel like there always is, or like what's one of your weaknesses or whatever that is. So you're supposed to turn it to a positive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely don't. What I would just tell, going back to your question about overwhelmed, I just don't think that, even if that's your reality, I don't think that you should bring that up in an interview at all, that you get overwhelmed. I don't think that like there's a way to spin overwhelmed. I wouldn't say that at all.
I think, so the way to spin it, although I gave her a different answer, for me, the way to spin that would be like, hey, I get really excited and I go all in on my projects. And so that might, maybe like kind of overwhelm us as a team because I'm coming on strong, but it's just because I want to do everything at once. Like maybe you could flip it like that.
if that's your approach, like, would you get overwhelmed, or do you come in strong, or is it you're overwhelmed and you get like paralysis from it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe. No, again, that was an awful answer. So here's what I told her to say.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, it was the last question and I had already kind of heard like all of her answers.
Yeah.
She did really, really, really well. And I said, how about this? You have trouble staying in your lane. So I took kind of like the overwhelmed, and basically, as you're looking at me with these eyes, remember, you guys can watch this on the Millionaire Recruiter YouTube. She was saying like how she gets so involved in guests and that she likes to work with all these other team members. And I said, look, sometimes you have trouble doing too much. So like if you see a problem, you like to solve it. And sometimes that's not you staying in your own lane, and you need to remember this is a teamwork and you need to like let people do their own jobs. I said, that seems, I was like, does that feel like a problem for you? She's like, oh yeah, I've had managers talk to me about this. I go, great. So that's kind of a problem, but you can spin it as you love solving problems and it gets you excited, and maybe like you need to stand down sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's how I spun that. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's great. I think that's way better than like overwhelmed. I think the initially saying like staying in your lane was like, okay, well, and again, it's going back to like dependent upon the company. Like for some people that are really structured, organizations that are really structured, that might be a problem. Like, no, this is your roles and responsibilities and you need to stay within these roles. And I've worked in environments like that. And then I've worked in other ones where it's like, they would absolutely love somebody that is wanting to take on all of these things. So where your answer evolved into, I think, is kind of one of those classic answers that people give to these questions of like, I get excited and I want to do a bunch of things and I want to take on a lot of things. And sometimes it's to my own detriment because there's only so many hours in a day. Like that's, I feel like that's kind of a classic answer to that, where people are like, I just like to do too much, or I'm, like you said, perfectionist, even to my own detriment sometimes, because I just want, it's like, it's one of those classic answers, which I think are what they're looking for. Like no company actually wants or probably appreciates somebody being brutally honest answering that question of like, I get overwhelmed, and to a point that I'm like paralyzed by, or I get overwhelmed with making decisions, or whatever their truth of that is. I think they're looking for you to spin it. So give them a version of the truth, but then how are you going to spin it is probably more what they're looking for in the answers to those questions than like, what do they actually feel they need to work on?
Yep. And here's what I would suggest. So if you do have trouble with this, or like you want to put your truth out there, but you need a positive way to spin this, I would ask your good old friend, ChatGPT. Yeah, I would say, spin this in a positive way that I can say in an interview.
Yes. Well, and that's another thing. Like people should be using that all the time. And like even I'm seeing so many like applications like this where, the applications that you have where it used to ask you the standard questions of like, are you 18 years of age or older, or like whatever that shit. Well, now they're asking you like questions relative to the job description. You used to see this. This isn't a new thing. Like you used to see it here or there. It's on like every application I've seen lately where, I mean, you're going to be writing novels about like, how does your, mission and personal mission align with ours? Like they're deep, thoughtful questions that I'm seeing lately that are like, okay, these applications already take a long time. And then going into answering those questions. So ChatGPT for questions like that is your buddy. Yeah.
All right. Well, hit us with the broke to boss.
Yeah. So, I think we've talked a lot about a lot of this stuff already, but, practicing is really, really important. So practice for confidence and a clear delivery. I think that practice for confidence is the big component that I'd like people to take away from that is like, you can practice your responses and answers. And then like when you give it, it's going to sound like a very scripted answer, but practicing your confidence, and that's a little bit different. And what that can look like for people is, maybe doing mock interviews with, your spouse or your friend or whoever. And even if you provide them, say, ask me these questions and let me just practice how I'm going to interview or answer these questions like it's an interview, which in turn is going to build up their confidence. And that's like the key takeaway here is like, be confident in how you're answering questions. Because I really feel like no matter what your answer is, or even if you fumble a little bit, as long as you bring it back and you're doing it with confidence, I think that it's like totally recoverable. But if you just like fumbling, it's going to be awful. So I think practicing the answers to your questions is one component, and then practicing your confidence in answering those questions is another.
Yep. The about you and the soft skills here are like, I think, one of the biggest.
Yeah.
One of the biggest.
Absolutely.
All right. Also, this was a longer episode. We couldn't help ourselves because it was awesome. But you can also watch this on the Millionaire Recruiter YouTube. And don't forget, we're going up on reviews here. So keep it coming. If you like it, share it. If you want to be, a guest, we're down for that. Hit us up. See you next Tuesday.
Thanks, y'all.